Okay, so today we're going to do the task that every fish tank keeper needs to do, and that is the occasional water change. So we're going to go through the process of how I do my water changes here in Idaho, and hopefully maybe you guys can learn something or see something different or learn something new. So the first process in tank maintenance is to wash one's hands and subsequent arms. So I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to go do that and wash my hands thoroughly, and I'll be right back to show you where we get started. All right, so we're looking at a standard 37-gallon bow front aquarium. As I said before, this tank's been set up for about 5 years or so and did have a crash in the invertebrate population about 2 years ago or so. About a year ago is when I introduced or reintroduced the new invertebrates and got it started. So all the growth you're seeing is approximately 12 and a half months since I introduced the invertebrates. I did introduce a few more along the way in the last 6 months, including what I believe are the hairy mushroom polyps and the leather coral, as well as I believe the devil's fingers, or whatever you want to call that. And so you can notice I also have a huge population of these little starfish. Asteria, I believe, is what they're called, not Asteria. Anyways, I'll look it up here in a second and review it. And I need to get a harlequin shrimp or something to get rid of those starfish. But you can notice that I haven't done a water change in about 4 weeks. Shame on me. I'm going to do a 10-gallon water change today. And the first thing I do when I go do my water change is to top off for evaporation so that the starting salinity in the tank matches what I'm going to put back. So we're going to top it off for evaporation. So yes, I confirmed these are called Asterina starfish. I got these introduced when I bought some corals in from a local retailer here in Boise. A number of the local fish stores have large populations of these. The harlequin shrimp will definitely take care of this in no time. I just haven't had time to place an order to get rid of it. And as you can see on the zoanthids, notice how they're kind of curled up and you can see a little bit of white on them. That's the irritation from the grazing of these little starfish. The other inconvenience of these little starfish is they tend to consume the purple coralline algae. Anyways, like I said, before I get started, I like to top off for evaporation, and so I use my trusty juice container. I fill it up with straight Boise, Idaho tap water. I don't even pay attention to the temperature, and this may freak you guys out. It's not chlorinated or anything, but I pour it directly into the fish tank. Careful to keep the water away from the metal halide. Okay, so I finished topping off for evaporation, and it took about 2 full gallons of water, and so I leave about 5 minutes in between each half gallon and let the water distribute properly around the aquarium, so that way I don't freak them out and change the salinity too fast. But normally I just use straight tap water for evaporation during the week, and as you can see, I use an open top on the aquarium, and with the metal halide, my evaporation is about a half gallon every 3 days or so. And so in between water changes, I may add as much as 5, 6, 7 gallons of water. Okay, so now we're going to look quickly at the tools I use for my water changes. Every saltwater aquarist needs to have some kind of a hydrometer. I use these little plastic ones from Instant Ocean. I also like to use some safety razor blades for cleaning the glass. And as you notice, I have not cleaned this glass since the last water change. So this is over 4 weeks of growth. And having the metal halide, this is a really good indicator of the health of one's aquarium, is the fact that I don't have a bunch of algae and stuff, and so that means my nutrient levels are pretty low and there really aren't that many phosphates in the aquarium. But I'm going to use these razor blades to clean the glass here in a second. I also like to use a 6-gallon pickle bucket, if you call it. This bucket I got, I think, when I ordered my Instant Ocean. One of the best ways to get a 6-gallon bucket is either to go to your beer store and pick one up, because everybody knows the beer store has 6-gallon buckets, and or just order a big giant bucket from Instant Ocean. But lately, when I buy salt, it's been cheaper to buy the cardboard box, 240 gallons worth of salt, and then just fill my little bucket. I need my cup or my 1 cup container to measure my salt, and then obviously my Instant Ocean. And I will dechlorinate the water using some sodium thiosulfate when I mix up my salt. Okay, so like I said, we're going to use the safety razor blade to remove some of the algae from the front of the glass. A couple items of note: you need to be careful of the fox-faced rabbitfish because it is a toxic fish. Although I've never been stung by it, my reading suggests that the pain is so intense that it makes you want to cut your hand off. And so what I generally do is just bring the razor blade in and just start from the middle of the tank and work side to side. You can take your snail and just move your snail out of the way. They will stick to the clean glass up here. And just really watch out for that fox-faced rabbitfish. And also sometimes the clownfish will bite you and really scare the crap out of you. And I really don't care about the All right, so the next step is to actually remove the water from the aquarium. Notice I raised my metal halide up a little bit higher. I've got these little wires that suspend it from the shelf to get it out of the way of the aquarium. Ideally, the best interest would be to not have your halide heated up during your water change, just in case. But like I said, I've been doing this for years. I just leave it turned on. So the next thing I do, I generally turn off the pumps while I do my water change. And then I have my trusty 6-gallon bucket and my trusty, I don't know, this thing's got to be as old as my son, at least like 10-year-old siphon hose. I put it in, make sure it's clean and rinsed if you got it in the garage or in a closet somewhere. And I start pulling the water, and then I just generally start going and sifting through the aquariums. Notice that Nemo just does not care for this at all. And I will remove approximately 5 gallons of water. All right, and notice how we dig it in here into the coral. Now this is a fairly fine coral substrate, so I don't want to suck it up because it's really expensive and it doesn't do well in the toilet when I dump it down the toilet. But I go through and I get all the grubbies out of the rocks like this, shaking it, and then using my finger on the other end of the bucket, or the other end of the tube, to restrict the thing. Notice how Nemo is just completely pissed off and just keeps on biting me. If you're not paying attention, it really hurts, and it's quite surprising how much of a bite a little fish like this can actually inflict. Way to go, Nemo. Get in there and get it. Ow! Alright, look at how nasty that is. Don't want to drop my phone in the bucket. That would be a remember, I turned off my power strip to my pumps and my heater. More so to keep the water, obviously, from sloshing around the tank while I'm working, but also to help just accidental electrocution. If I were to break that heater or something else were to malfunction, it keeps me from getting zapped in the meantime. I'm going to go dump the water out, and then we'll add our water back to the tank. Alright, so I pulled approximately 5 gallons of water off the bathtub. Remember to keep your temperature pretty close to your fish tank. I just measure it with my fingers and get kind of a good an idea of how the temperatures match. I use just an over-the-counter sodium thiosulfate and none of the other chemicals, just like 8 drops into my water for the dechlorination process. And then in my experience, I've just been using the standard Instant Ocean for basic fish and invertebrate keeping. It's been more than sufficient if you keep up on your water changes. I use a 1-cup mix. It's approximately a 1/2 cup of salt per gallon. So if my math serves me correctly, that's 2.5 cups of salt. And then I generally usually add a little bit more than what I think is a 1/2 cup because of the way the cup is shaped. Stick it in there, and then I'm going to stir it up, and then we'll check the specific gravities. All right, the next most important step is just to quickly confirm your salinity. In the past, I've said I don't actually measure salinity, and for the most part, that's kind of true. I've been doing this so long that I know it's 2.5 cups of salt per 5 gallons, but we're going to go ahead and show the measurement here. And so I'm using my handy-dandy hydrometer, and I'm going to bring it up, and we'll let the bubbles dissipate, and notice, let's see, what do we got? Notice we're at about 1.024-ish. So that's right about where I want. I like to keep it just a little bit under 1.025. We go down to our handy-dandy bucket, and then we dump our salinity hydrometer thingy in there. And let's see, oh, it's kind of hard to see. There it is. And we are close enough, 1.024, 1.025-ish. Okay, so the last step, obviously we got to clean up so that the family, the lovely wife, doesn't get all freaked out that you've got water all over the floor and the kitchen table and there's salt everywhere, is to put the water back in the aquarium. And although I don't necessarily recommend this for everybody, this is the way I've been doing it on this particular tank. I take my siphon in one hand, I go down, I reach down and grab my bucket. I grabbed on my bucket. Now, OSHA would say this is a bad idea. I heave my bucket up on the fish tank, just like this. I set it down, and then I use my handy-dandy snorkel, put the water in the tank, and I start filling the tank from here. And ideally, if I measured my water correctly, In a couple of minutes, it'll gradually fill the aquarium. All right, so that's the basic process for doing a small water change on a small reef tank. As you can see, the water is still a little bit cloudy and will clear over time. So if you're going to have a dinner party or something and you plan on cleaning your aquarium, do it at least 4 to 5 hours before your dinner party. That way your water will be nice and crystal clear by the time your guests arrive. The other item of note is when you clean up your glass, which I've already done here, I generally use just Windex. Spray the Windex on your towel, not on the glass. That way you don't accidentally spray it in the fish tank. If you want to get a little bit of extra polish or a little bit of extra shine out of your glass, use a little bit of newspaper rather than paper towel. Anyways, only in Idaho. Thanks for watching.